All right, well, folks seem to enjoy the prototyping tutorials in the past, so let's do it again. This time around, we're going to mess with a classic double dragon. I recently picked up the Cool Baby Retro HDMI, whatever. Start Googling that, you'll see what it is. Cool Baby is the keywords. It's basically it's just a classic gaming console. It looks like the old Nintendo. It's got 600 game on it. You'll see the cover. It says 600 game, but oh goodness, it's decent, and it's got Double Dragon on there. So I thought, well, maybe we should talk about how that would potentially be programmed. So what you've typically got is a very long level, right? So let's just say this box right here is a TV screen's worth. So then you've got a few of these guys, and it might go 6, 7, 8 of those, and of course you follow along. Here's kind of the ground plane, and you've got your buildings in the background, and you just basically beat up on people. Although when I play it, I usually end up getting beat up upon. So your character is about yay tall. Guys come out, and you pretty much just roam around up and down, and to about a max of here, down to there, right? So in terms of setting up a level, and this is kind of sprite kit specific, but if this was an SKS file, a scene file, I would probably lay out everything horizontally in here, even though a lot of it is not visible, of course. But I think that makes a little bit more sense than trying to load it up kind of as needed. And I don't think it's going to hit you on performance, at least not significantly. I could be wrong about that. So basically, I would, obviously you start off on one screen here. When you kill enough people or beat them up, you progress on to this one. So and I think in most cases with the Double Dragon games, the screen automatically moves a little bit, or at least if the character is past this point on the screen, so let's say halfway down, right? Then the screen, I meant that to be red. Then the screen starts progressing onto the next one to a point at which you kind of got to stop. So it's somewhere in your code you're setting up these sort of markers for if the player is past X point of 1600, let's say that's 1600 or so, then you're going to stop until basically enough guys have been killed in this area, and then you're going to progress forward to, let's say, I was going to say 2400, something like that, and so on over that way. And again, you could automatically move the screen by just adding value onto the camera. Certainly I would use a camera for something like this. And let's get into the actual kind of fight mechanics here. So zoom in a bit. All right. So again, here's kind of our ground plane. Here's our fighter dude. Let's put his fists up. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, kind of welling down, I guess. Building back here. These guys often tend to appear from doorways and stuff like that. And in a game like this, I think what you would find is that the player and the enemy are strangely similar. I mean, hey, they're both people that are fighting in your game, right? But a lot of the same rules apply to them. For example, let me switch back to red. So, here's the top point at which they can both go. Here's the bottom point. You don't want them to be, only peeking out through the bottom here. Little eyes. And they've got similar states, right? So, for example, you're just kind of walking or normal state. Punch. Oh, this is not... Remember, Double Dragon was made, back in the late 80s, early 90s or so for the sequels. There weren't a ton of combo moves or anything like that. There were some, but, you had like jump kicking or spin kicking. Something I always tried to do as a kid. Never worked out too well. I can never get that to just spin like a helicopter. So let's say these are kind of the states, right? And in this state, when you're just walking or being normal, you can be damaged, right? Can be damaged. And then you kind of have to determine if in the other states, are you able to get damaged, or are you only able to kind of, do damage, right? But yeah, that's going to apply to both, this character, I mean, the enemy and your main character over there. So in some sense, you're basically playing a game of paper, scissors, rock here, where if you got paper, it beats rock, right? So you're setting up conditions like that. So, if this guy is walking and then this guy is punching, then the damage is going to be done to him, right? And same thing goes the other way. And then you kind of have to figure out, well, what if both are, one's punching and one's kicking, So then you'd have to decide who's going to kind of win out in a situation like that. And let me make this a little smaller. And just in terms of let me draw kind of a character sprite here. Okay. So here's our guy. I don't know why I'm drawing these little block people today. And why did I put a hat on him? I don't remember a hat ever being on these guys. Okay, so here he is. He's got kind of his fist up here. So, you're going to bring in artwork to the game that is, a series of images, and in one image, the leg goes up and kicks, right? So suddenly you've kind of increased the entire, I guess, bounding box of this character, right? And I suppose the temptation would be to make this entire kind of bounding box here be the collision area, or basically an invisible area that we're kind of listing for collision contacts on. So, your enemy might have a similar area like that, right? So the temptation, I think, would be to use that as your kind of area to detect if the character is kicking or punching and contacting something else. I would go a little bit fancier with it, and I would probably, during these states like kicking, then I would have another area appear. Okay, and again, these are just invisible boxes essentially, or circles, that are just temporarily used for just detecting those collisions. So yeah, I would do that. So that way, and the main point of this is that if you just have this appear at certain times in specific areas, for example, right by the foot, then you don't have to worry about what happens if there's a guy behind him, So here's another bad guy over here. Apparently it's just a bottle of Pepsi or something, what that is. But thug. There he goes. He's kind of a big guy. So in other words, yeah, what you don't want to happen is that this guy gets attacked when this guy is kicking over here some other guy, because that doesn't make any sense at all, that guy's going to receive some damage from behind over in the situation. So but I would probably have this little blue box right here be used for receiving damage, essentially. So basically you have different contacts for what can hurt the player and how he hurts other people, right? Because it would make sense, if this guy laid a punch out to this dude right here, if he gets hit from behind or the back or whatever into this little box, then yeah, he's gonna start screaming. I got hit. And then what else do we got here? All right, so in terms of the characters kind of tracking each other, right? The player, of course, he's controlled by the user, so he can go any direction he wants to go, walk around. When these guys spawn or get into the screen over here, I mean, the math on having one try to get close to the main character is incredibly simple. Of course, you're on the y-axis over here, he's just going to try to get lined up on the y-axis with him. So let's say he's at 200, right? He's at 100. Then you just basically detect, okay, well, is he lower than him? All right, if he's lower than him, he needs to move up, right? So in your update statement, just, over a second or two, you're going to increment this player upward by 1, 2, 3 points or so until he's finally up there. When he is up there or close enough in range, then you stop moving him. And of course, you're going to do something similar on the x-axis. And you could do those at the same time. Now, if you did that at the same time, he's going to move, diagonally, right? Or you could have him just move up and down, and then he starts moving in on this guy. In terms of properties to make things a little bit more difficult, obviously a variable for the speed at which these enemies line up with the main character. And certainly you'll notice, I noticed when I was playing it the other day, is that there's different characters that are moving faster toward the player. Some of them actually just kind of run out. So there's that. And also I guess you could kind of do some randomization about how the characters try to approach him too. Sometimes it seems like they will go in this type motion, so they'll start over here, and that way you get one character, one bad guy in front of the player, one in the back, so here's your poor little player right here, which is definitely not the situation you want to be in a fight. I used to take adult karate all through my 20s and I don't know, early 30s, and this was a no-no. You want to quickly get out of that situation. So anyway, what else do we got? In terms of kind of finishing off the level, this is obviously an easy thing. You just got, at some point you decide, well, once you get to this door, once contact is made right over here, you jump off to a different SKS file or scene file, different level, And, oh gosh, what else do you got in the games like this? You've got pickup items, occasionally comes across a Negan style bat, something with chains around it or whatever, barbed wire. And that in those cases, I'd probably just switch out the artwork for the character, the main sprites for the character. I wouldn't try to have a hand be a separate sprite that then I parent the bat to the hand. I think that gets a little messy over time. I guess somebody could argue that as well, and that sort of depends on the game development tools you're using. I think with Sprite Kit, I would just have a different, entirely different set of sprites, animation sequences that all include the different pickup weapons in there. Now, maybe, if you wanted to have like 100 different weapons, maybe then you start changing things up a little bit. Maybe then you start attaching each individual weapon there. But, I just, it's for simplicity's sake, I don't think I would do that. And then, golly, what else do we got with a game like this? It's, there's not, I hate to say there's not a ton to it, but I think you could actually sit down and do a decent a prototype for a game like this with actual code in a fairly short amount of time. Even if you just started with kind of block sequences, just blocks for the sprites, just to kind of work out one block moving toward another one, stuff like that. And that's kind of how you sort of have to begin with a game. You don't always have to start with the artwork looking so nice and polished. So anyway, all right, that's gonna do it for Double. Who were the actual dragons in the game? I guess they were the players, huh? Did they ever turn into dragons though? I don't. That would have been cool if at one point they just went into being actual like fire-breathing dragons. Okay, that's it. Dream big, princess. That's my catchphrase. No, it's on Disney Junior all the time. Okay, that's it, folks.